The wedding planner's manicured finger pointed toward the back corner of the Meridian Art Museum's grand ballroom like she was directing traffic around roadkill. Maya, sweetie, we need you seated way back there. Behind the pillars would be perfect. I adjusted my beige dress, the color my sister Priya had specifically requested so I'd blend with the décor, and nodded quietly. After 28 years of family gatherings, I'd learned that resistance only made things worse. The front rows are reserved for important guests, the planner continued, her voice dripping with the kind of false sweetness that made my teeth ache. Priya's Harvard Business School classmates, her fiancé's tech startup friends, the mayor's family. You understand. I understood perfectly. In my family's hierarchy, I ranked somewhere between the caterers and the centerpieces. Useful for writing checks when they needed them, invisible when they wanted to show off. Of course, I said, watching the planner's relief that she wouldn't have to explain why the bride's own sister wasn't worthy of a decent view. Priya swept over in her $12,000 dress, phone pressed to her ear, diamond earrings catching the museum's carefully designed lighting. Yes, make sure the photographer captures the Ashworth table. Their family foundation donated $50,000 last year. She spotted me and lowered her voice. Why, there you are. You look. She paused, searching for something that wouldn't sound completely insulting, appropriate. Thank you. I'd stopped trying to meet Priya's fashion standards years ago. While she collected designer bags, I collected advanced degrees. While she networked at charity galas, I built the technology that powered half the nonprofit organizations in the state. Listen, Priya's expression shifted to what I recognized as her asking for money face. The photographer's package was more expensive than we budgeted. Could you cover the difference? It's only $8,000. Only $8,000. Like I was an ATM that dispensed money without question or thanks. I'll transfer it tonight. You're the best little sister. She air-kissed my cheek, careful not to disturb her makeup. Oh, and remember, no talking about your computer stuff during dinner conversation. Derek's colleagues are here and it's just so technical. Derek, her groom, jogged over with the frantic energy of someone who'd had too much champagne too early. Why, did Priya tell you? We might get featured in Metropolitan Weddings magazine. The photographer says our guest list is incredibly impressive. Congratulations. I'd helped pay for half their impressive guest list through various family emergency loans that were never repaid. The venue coordinator wants to start the pre-ceremony dedication soon, Derek continued. Something about the new museum wing. Won't take long. I felt my stomach tighten. The dedication ceremony. I'd forgotten they'd scheduled it for today. What dedication? Priya frowned. I specifically requested no museum events during our wedding day. Derek shrugged. Apparently it was scheduled months ago. They're just honoring some big donor who funded the new contemporary art wing. The museum director insisted, said it would only take 10 minutes. Priya's eyes narrowed. Who's the donor? Anyone we know. Some foundation, Derek said dismissively. The Quantum Heritage Foundation or something like that. Never heard of them. I watched my sister's face carefully. She had no idea that the Quantum Heritage Foundation was mine. That I'd been quietly running it for 6 years while she thought I was just another mid-level software engineer struggling to pay rent. 10 minutes, Priya sighed dramatically. Fine. As long as it doesn't interfere with our photo schedule. Maya, since you're already seated in back, could you make sure none of the staff interrupt once our ceremony begins? Of course. She was already walking away, phone back to her ear, coordinating the complex choreography of her perfect day. A day where I was background decoration in beige, relegated to the shadows while she basked in carefully purchased glamour. I made my way to my assigned seat behind a marble pillar, watching the museum staff prepare for the dedication ceremony. Dr. Elizabeth Chin, the museum director, was reviewing notes with her team near the small stage they'd erected. She caught my eye and nodded subtly. In exactly 43 minutes, my sister's perfect wedding was going to become very interesting. The next hour unfolded like watching a disaster movie where only I could see the meteor approaching. Priya flitted between guest tables, ensuring everyone knew about her Harvard MBA, Derek's revolutionary app that had received series of funding, and their upcoming honeymoon in the Maldives. She paused at each table just long enough to drop impressive details before moving on to the next audience. The app uses machine learning algorithms, I heard Derek explaining to a table of his fraternity brothers, his voice carrying across the ballroom. We're disrupting the entire food delivery space. Maya actually helped with some basic coding early on. Basic coding. I'd built their entire recommendation engine and fraud detection system, working nights and weekends for equity that Derek later diluted to nothing. But I stayed quiet, nursing my water and watching Priya work the room like a seasoned politician. Our parents arrived fashionably late, Mom resplendent in silk and Dad sporting his successful surgeon confidence like expensive cologne. They made a grand entrance, pausing to greet the other parents before approaching Priya with arms extended. Our golden girl, Mom beamed, adjusting Priya's veil with practiced hands. Everything looks absolutely perfect. The venue, the flowers, the guest list, you've outdone yourself. Maya helped with some of the expenses, Priya said, and I caught the subtle emphasis on helped, as if I'd contributed pocket change rather than $60,000. Dad glanced in my direction and gave me the same polite nod he'd use for a distant acquaintance. Good to see Maya could make it. How's the job search going? I'd been promoted to principal engineering manager 3 months ago, leading a team of 47 engineers, but correcting him would only invite more questions I couldn't answer honestly. It's going well. You should talk to Derek about opportunities at his company, Dad continued. He might have something entry-level. Derek, who'd needed my basic coding to get his app functioning, nodded magnanimously. Always happy to help family. We're growing fast. Might have some junior developer positions opening up. I smiled and nodded, the same response I'd perfected over years of similar conversations. Let them believe I was struggling. It made my actual life easier to manage. Aunt Patricia materialized with her usual talent for appearing wherever gossip might be brewing. Maya, darling. Still doing the computer thing? When are you going to find a nice boy and settle down like Priya? I'm focused on my career right now, I replied, the diplomatic answer that usually ended these conversations. Well, you can't wait forever, Patricia continued, oblivious to my discomfort. At least you have Priya's example to follow. Look how well she's done for herself. Harvard education, successful husband, beautiful wedding. It just shows what's possible when you apply yourself. The implication hung in the air like stale perfume. Priya had applied herself. I apparently had not. Dr. Chin approached the microphone, saving me from Patricia's career counseling. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for just a moment. Before we begin today's ceremony, we have a special dedication to complete. Priya shot Derek an annoyed look. Her perfect timeline was being disrupted by museum business she considered beneath her notice. 6 years ago, Dr. Chin continued, we received an extraordinary gift that has transformed this institution. The Quantum Heritage Foundation's donation of $100 million funded our new contemporary art wing, our digital archives project, and our community outreach programs. A murmur rippled through the crowd. $100 million was serious money, even in a room full of people who considered themselves wealthy. Today we're honored to have the Foundation's director here with us, Dr. Chin said, her eyes finding mine across the room. Someone who believes that art and technology can work together to build a more connected community. I felt the familiar flutter of anxiety that preceded any public recognition. In 6 years of running the foundation, I'd managed to stay completely anonymous, working through lawyers and administrators to keep my name out of every document and press release. Maya Patel has quietly revolutionized how we think about technology's role in preserving and sharing artistic heritage, Dr. Chin continued. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear Priya's sharp intake of breath from 3 tables away. We're honored to dedicate this wing to her vision and generosity. Maya, would you join me on stage? Every head in the room turned toward my corner behind the pillar. I saw Priya's face drain of color, saw Derek's mouth fall open, saw my parents look around in confusion as if there might be another Maya Patel hidden somewhere in the shadows. I stood up slowly, smoothing my beige dress, and began walking toward the stage where Dr. Chin waited with a knowing smile. The meteor had arrived. The walk from my back row seat to the stage felt like crossing an ocean. Every step forward was accompanied by whispers, shocked murmurs, and the sound of chairs scraping as people turned to get a better look at the woman they dismissed as unimportant background noise. There must be some mistake, I heard Priya whisper urgently to Derek. Maya doesn't have that kind of money. She can barely afford rent. Dr. Chin handed me the microphone with the warmth of someone greeting an old friend. Which in many ways she was. We'd worked together for years on various projects, though always behind the scenes. Thank you, Dr. Chin. My voice carried clearly through the sound system, reaching every corner of the ballroom where my family sat in stunned silence. When I established the Quantum Heritage Foundation, I wanted to work quietly, away from attention and publicity. Today seems to have complicated that approach. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the crowd. I caught sight of Aunt Patricia's expression, confusion mixed with the dawning realization that she'd spent the last hour offering career advice to someone who earned more in investment returns than most people made in a lifetime. Art and technology aren't opposites, I continued, settling into the familiar rhythm of public speaking that came from years of presenting at conferences, board meetings, and investor calls. They're different languages describing the same human experiences. The Foundation's work here represents 5 years of building bridges between digital innovation and artistic preservation. From the stage, I could see my family's table clearly. Dad sat frozen, his surgeon's precision abandoned as he struggled to process this new information. Mom's social smile had vanished, replaced by the calculating expression she wore when recalibrating social situations. Priya looked like she was watching a car accident in slow motion. The Contemporary Art Wing houses one of the most advanced digital archival systems in the country, I explained, warming to the subject that had consumed my passion and resources for half a decade. Every piece is documented with quantum-resistant encryption, ensuring future generations can experience these works even as technology evolves. Derek leaned over to whisper something to Priya, but she shushed him sharply, her attention fixed on me with laser focus. But technology is only as valuable as the human connections it enables, I said, making eye contact with Dr. Chen. This museum doesn't just preserve art. It makes it accessible to communities that have been historically excluded from cultural spaces. Our mobile outreach program has reached 12,000 students in underserved schools this year alone. The applause started small from the museum staff and board members who knew the real scope of our work, then spread through the crowd as the magnitude of the donation sank in. Maya Patel represents the best of quiet philanthropy, Dr. Chin said, retaking the microphone. She could have demanded naming rights, public recognition, gala dinners in her honor. Instead, she chose to let the work speak for itself. As I handed the microphone back and prepared to return to my seat, I heard Priya's voice cut through the applause. Maya, wait. But I was already walking off the stage, past the shocked faces of family members who had spent years treating me like a financial burden instead of the person keeping several of them afloat. The seating chart, as I'd mentioned in my opening hook, was about to change dramatically. The aftermath unfolded exactly as I'd expected, with the predictability of a well-designed algorithm. Priya's wedding continued, but the energy had shifted completely. Guests who had barely acknowledged my existence now approached with business cards and investment opportunities. The photographer, suddenly interested in capturing the real story, asked if I'd pose for pictures with the museum wing dedication plaque. I declined politely and returned to my seat behind the pillar, watching my family navigate their new reality. Derek spent the reception trying to position himself as my business partner rather than someone who'd exploited my work. Priya oscillated between fury at having her spotlight stolen and desperate attempts to associate herself with my success. Our parents moved through damage control mode, suddenly remembering various times they'd always known I was special. 3 weeks later, the consequences began manifesting in ways they hadn't anticipated. Derek's startup lost 2 major investors when they discovered his revolutionary algorithms were largely my work, used without proper attribution. Priya's lifestyle blog, which had monetized her successful family brand, hemorrhaged sponsors as her actual relationship to wealth became clear. Dad's social standing at the country club suffered when people realized he'd been dismissive of a daughter whose foundation funded half their charitable causes. The wedding photos in Metropolitan Weddings were beautiful, but the accompanying article focused more on the mysterious tech philanthropist than the bride. I never returned their money or resumed my role as the family ATM. Instead, I hired an assistant to handle their increasingly desperate requests for loans, meetings, and reconciliation attempts. Sometimes the best response to years of being underestimated is simply proving them right. They never really knew me at all.